Hi, it is December 9th, day 9 of the Advent tea year, and I'm back up in the office. We're gonna go ahead and keep giving this a go because I got caught up, and I think that was partly because I didn't have to transfer everything from my personal computer to the big machine, and I didn't have this huge delay of anything. Everything just ended up being right here on the machine that I ended up needing. I actually cleaned up my background a little, so woohoo. Trying, learning. It's all just an experience together, so I'm pretty proud of myself for all of that. Today, we've got a fun little green box with little dots on it, and today's tea is Merry Mistletoe. So look at that, don't even have major reflection today. You can see some good chunks in there. Yep. Now this tea actually does have 1 pip on that caffeine meter, so there is real tea in this. And this one is going to steep for 90 degrees Celsius for 3 to 5 minutes. And in this particular tea, anyone want to guess the very first ingredient? If you thought apple, you would be right. That's been the first ingredient for several of our teas now, and it's the same here. So we have apple, raisins, hibiscus blossoms, natural cranberry and apple flavoring, cranberries, cloves, apple slices, cinnamon sticks, mistletoe, white tea, rose petals, cranberry pieces, and stevia extract. So it definitely sounds from all those ingredients like a really good Christmas tea. This absolutely makes me think of all the benefits of the season, berries and holly and wreaths and scarves. It's just very much a wintry sounding kind of tea to me, more so than the other ones so far. So let's give this a smell. Ooh, I like the smell of this one a lot. It's got a really good blend of fruit smells and some faint flower smells. In many ways, it's not so much Christmassy in this particular smell, but it does make me think of being on vacation somewhere. And who doesn't want a vacation now in 2020? I mean, this is the year that brought us, 6 months of April? So the fact that we are finally approaching 2021, come on, we all could use a vacation. Oh yeah, this is a really excellent smell here. So we're gonna pop over to this other camera here and shake out some of my ingredients and see if I can figure out what these all are. All right. Okay, so I'm not sure I even know where to start. Okay, I think I found a raisin. Yeah, I think that's a raisin. Got one. That's kind of squishy. I think that's apple. I'm starting to get used to apple. Also kind of squishy, probably also apple. I think that's a piece of cinnamon stick because it's kind of stick-like. Let's see. I believe this is either a hibiscus or rose, that petal there. We have some other little tea leaf looking kinds of stuff going on. And that's about all I can identify with any sort of confidence. So we've got a lot of things that I think are going to end up looking a lot alike. So we'll have to end up seeing what we can figure out from the actual taste of it. I'm going to shake a little bit more now into my bag. And I do have some extra in here, so that if this is as promising as it sounds like it's going to be and smells like it's going to be, I should be able to have another cup. All right. So if we're going to look at the ingredients here and talk about them, I'm pretty sure that the tea's given me some clear indication of what ingredient I should talk about. So I for sure am going to go ahead and take that hint and talk about cranberries, but I also want to go ahead and talk about mistletoe, because not only is it in the ingredient list, but it's also in the name of the tea. So that seemed like a perfect choice to go ahead and talk about something that's a little more maybe seasonally appropriate and handle it in that particular manner. So as far as cranberries are concerned, they come from an evergreen dwarf shrub, usually as some kind of trailing vine, and they are part of the genus Vaccinium. Vaccinium oxycoccus is native to Britain and to Europe and is cultivated there, and then varieties in the Vaccinium macrocarpon are cultivated in the United States, Canada, and Chile. So we've got Eastern Hemisphere and Western Hemisphere. I suppose I should have done that reverse for the camera, so because East is going to be over here if if you're watching this, and then West would be this way if you're thinking about a map. Regardless, you've got different hemispheres and different varieties of cranberries that are there. Typically, when you're looking for cranberry plants, they do grow in acidic bogs throughout the cooler regions of the northern hemisphere, again with the exception of Chile. But Chile is going to have some areas that are going to be much cooler in temperature because it's got the Andes and it has some really amazing peaks down there in high altitude, which of course brings your temperature down. However, when you're thinking about acidic bogs, personally it makes me think that cranberries are some kind of ogre waiting to yell at you to get out of their bog, or else, you might end up getting confused that you're wandering through some sort of misty marsh trying to go destroy a ring or something. Regardless, cranberries, when they are growing, can grow up to 7 feet long and really only about 2 to 8 inches tall. So you're looking for something that's going to be really close to the ground when you're looking for cranberries. And they have those evergreen leaves, and they typically grow in pairs along their stems, and their stems are actually really wiry. They're very thin. They're not super woodsy or branch-like. They are very, very narrow stems. The flowers themselves for the cranberry plants are a dark pink with reflexed petals, which means that the stamens are going to be completely exposed and hanging out there ready for their pollinators. And predominantly it is bees that will pollinate the cranberry flowers. Once we have everything developing from flower into berry, the cranberry, as you would expect, and as you probably hopefully know, goes from a green to a bright red when it is ready. And cranberries are edible raw, unlike elderberries, which we learned yesterday. But while they are edible raw, the acid content tends to make them pretty sour and bitter, and it overwhelms the sweetness that's there. So 95% of the cranberries that we consume are sweetened and cooked in some form or processed in some form, so that way they're a little more palatable. Now, if you've had unsweetened all-natural cranberry juice, you're still going to get a bit of that pucker. And I know some people quite like it. Other people definitely prefer to dilute it with other things. No judgment, just commentary on the fact that that's just the nature of that particular fruit. When you are then consuming cranberries and you've processed them, you're typically going to end up consuming them, as I mentioned, in juice, in sauces, jams, preserves, or potentially pies, and even as dried cranberries, which we call craisins. That might actually just be the brand of them. Probably just the brand. But essentially they do what raisins do with grapes, and they just dehydrate and become these shriveled little pieces. Tasty though. Of course, cranberry juice, cranberry sauce. Handwriting again. My cranberry sauce is a traditional holiday accompaniment to turkey, especially in the United States, Canada, and the UK, although the UK predominantly eats cranberry sauce at Christmas, whereas the United States and Canada predominantly eat it around their Thanksgivings. Cranberries can also be used frequently in several cocktails. In fact, cranberry juice is used in cosmopolitans. I will say, in my own experience with cranberry sauce and cranberries, cranberry sauce is not really just an accompaniment. Cranberry sauce is a feature and main staple when my family is getting together for holiday meals. My dad tends to make enough of it that he can just give large jars of it straight over to my sister, who loves cranberry sauce. Just absolutely loves it. She'll just eat it straight out of the jar. And, again, no judgment. I think it's adorable. She just loves it that much. And again, my dad at least makes it from scratch, and that has at least been how I experience cranberry sauce. I don't really eat it. I'm weird. I have other issues, but that's okay. Most cranberries, by which I mean actually 98% of them, come from the United States, Canada, and Chile. So they're going to be that macrocarpon variety. They are actually related to bilberries, blueberries, and huckleberries. And then one reason when you're cooking with cranberries, or if you're trying to get a cranberry juice, you might find it blended with apples, or find those cran apple blends and cran apple pies, is actually because that particular variety of cranberry has a slightly apple taste to it. So pairing that cranberry with apple will bring out some more apple notes. So this tea has apple as a main ingredient in it, and we have cranberry, which again, if 98% come from the US, Canada, and Chile, I'm expecting to be more of that apple flavored variety of cranberry, so I'm expecting to get some really strong apple notes out of this tea. So from a history standpoint, just because I want to touch on that since it's might be something that you're familiar with, but historically, the Narragansett people of the Algonquian tribe or nation in New England left evidence of having used cranberries in pemmican, and pemmican is a mixture of tallow, dried meat, and dried berries, which you use as a food ration. And they also left evidence that they would have used cranberries in dyes. They called the berries sasaminash, and they might actually be responsible for introducing the colonists in the early America region of Massachusetts to the fruit. The first reference to cranberries, though, when we're looking at the American cranberry in text, comes from 1550 from James White Norwood, and he wrote about Native Americans and the native indigenous peoples having cups of cranberries in them. But there are other references to cranberries across the records of colonial America that just continue to date from there. So you've got some in like 1643 and like continuing all the way up into the 1700s. So that's how we know that cranberries can grow in North America. Notably, cranberries also offer some form of urinary health support, but they don't necessarily work for everyone, and they don't work for any existing urinary tract infections. Just so you know, if you're going to do cranberries or cranberry juice, it's supposed to be preventative. And the thought behind why cranberries work for all of that was initially that scientists thought that cranberries made the urine more acidic and thus created an inhospitable environment for bacteria. But now the leading theory is that cranberries instead make it more difficult for that infection-causing bacteria to even stick to the urinary tract wall in the first place. Or at least that's what WebMD tells me. WebMD for everything, right? As usual, like I said in the last video, don't take supplements without consulting your doctor. Don't just do them willy-nilly because you think that you're going to get some sort of super benefit from them. Supplements are not controlled the same way that medications in this country are, so you do want to use caution. That said, a glass of cranberry juice here and there is not going to cause you any harm. So I'm going to go ahead and start steeping my tea. Keep having a measuring cup and then keep not using it. And it's going to be added to, the bingo card of what does Andrea do wrong? Anyway, in talking about mistletoe, which I think was an interesting ingredient, it is way down there on that list for sure, but again, how often are you going to encounter mistletoe being used in something? Mistletoe is actually also a berry-bearing plant, and it is an obligate hemiparasitic plant, which means that it is parasitic to a host tree under natural conditions, but it is also somewhat photosynthetic. So it gets some of its nutrients from sunlight, but it does actually predominantly feed on its host. So there you go. Mistletoe is a parasite. And then, you think about how much we use it for different things, right? There are actually many different species of mistletoe, 1,500 in fact, and they are all around the world. You actually have a couple of interesting strains of them. You have a European strain, which you will find in the British Isles, and then you will also find another species related to that European family group, and that's in southwest Spain, in southern Portugal, Morocco, and in parts of southern Africa. And there's yet another species that is of that European family that was introduced in Northern California in 1900 and has been quite successful there. This particular variety of mistletoe has a smooth-edged leaf and has evergreen leaves in pairs along the stem and white berry clusters. So it's going to look a little bit like this, except for instead of these little red berries, you're going to have small white berry clusters. And this is, some artificial decor, but this is a kissing plant here. And typically, as I'll discuss a little bit later, we do use mistletoe as that kissing plant. There is an eastern variety of mistletoe, and I don't know why it's called eastern necessarily, but that one actually is native to North America, and it has shorter, broader leaves and longer berry clusters. So your shorter, broader. Did I say shorter, longer? I think I said shorter, longer, but shorter, broader. So they're going to be short and fat, whereas the European varieties are going to be long and narrow, like in the little fake plant I showed you here. But regardless, among all species of mistletoe, toxicity levels do vary. So we have another plant that is out to kill you. European mistletoe is more toxic than the American mistletoe, but if you're going to be concerned about the toxicity and consumption of mistletoe, you're going to find those concerns to be more prevalent here in the United States at the very least. However, the effects of consuming mistletoe are usually not fatal, again, assuming that you're not eating a lot of it and you get yourself to poison control pretty quickly on that. But don't go eating mistletoe. Interestingly, in South Asia, mistletoe is often used as an external topical medicine, largely for benefits to the joints, like with arthritis. The effects of consuming toxic mistletoe, just to continue on again, not fatal, but if you do end up consuming mistletoe, you will experience blurred vision, diarrhea, nausea, and vomiting. So be aware of that. It can also, however, it is rare, it can also cause seizures, hypertension, and even cardiac arrest. So again, it's rare to die from eating mistletoe, but it is a risk. So again, don't eat this plant. Naturally, toxins of mistletoe are more concentrated in the leaves and in the berries, and teas that are prepared from these parts of the plant are particularly dangerous. I'm super confident in this tea. Again, I don't think that David's Tea is going to use something that is going to endanger its consumers. That would be unethical, and from everything that I can tell, they are a perfectly upstanding company. Now, supposedly, mistletoe has had some kind of role in treating arthritis, like I mentioned, that topical application. It has also apparently helped with high blood pressure, epilepsy, and infertility. So, not sure on that one. But what's interesting about that infertility aspect is that mistletoe is actually associated with helping resolve male infertility rather than female infertility. In fact, in many pre-Christian cultures, including the Celts, the ancient Greeks, and some Druidic mythology, that particular white berry of the mistletoe is clearly indicative of corresponding to male anatomy. I will let you think on that. Okay, moving on. In Norse mythology, mistletoe actually does feature because an arrow made of mistletoe wood is what kills Balder, and that's because some trickery of Loki. Loki gets Balder's twin to do some sort of archery contest there, and mistletoe wood is the only vulnerability that Balder has, and Loki has it in for Balder for various reasons throughout mythology there, but it is an arrow made of mistletoe wood that does kill Balder. So there's some mythological facts for you. The Romans, by contrast, associated mistletoe with peace, love, and understanding, and they would hang it in doorways as a way to protect their household, and it was part of the celebration and season of Saturnalia, which studies have shown has a lot in common with our modern day Christmas. So that's probably where we get that tradition from. And so now, of course, we do see mistletoe in doorways as a sort of kissing prompter for lovers. And this was actually popularized among the serving class, so servants, in the late 18th century and into the Victorian era. And in this tradition, a man could kiss any woman who was standing underneath the mistletoe, and he had full permission to do it. In fact, he was expected and encouraged to do so. A woman who refused the kiss was then bound to have bad luck. So there was a lot of societal pressure that if you were under the mistletoe and a man came up to go ahead and kiss you, you had to let him. Otherwise, you'd be cursed in some way, shape, or form. Not into that at all. That's just a whole lot of ick. So I'm gonna hard pass on that particular tradition. But other traditions with regards to mistletoe and kissing did at least have the caveat that if you were going to kiss someone, you had to remove a berry from the plant, and once all the berries had been plucked from the plant, there was no more power to it, or so to speak, and so no more kisses could be had under that particular piece of mistletoe. Now, mistletoe is, just as some final facts here, it's also the state floral emblem of Oklahoma, and in the UK town of Tunbury Wells, they crown an annual mistletoe queen. So like a little pageant kind of thing. So there you go. There's some things about mistletoe and cranberries that maybe you didn't know. And that also explains where we get our mistletoe tradition. So let's check our steep over here and see what's what. Oh, this tea is quite red. I don't know why I'm surprised by that, actually. With the cranberries in here, I really should not be surprised that this tea is very, very red. It's really a perfect cranberry color. And I can still, from a distance here, smell that glorious fruit scent that I got earlier. Potentially because of the dark coloring, it doesn't seem to be super clear. You're definitely not seeing what I can see from my angle on, when I've got this under the camera here. I can see sort of to the bottom of that cup, but for the most part, I think because of that dark coloring, you're not going to see much down there. So yeah, you can see here some more contrast. It is a very red color. I almost get like a sort of herby smell that almost makes me think of like when you've got Christmas decor with all of those boughs and stuff stored up into storage, and then you open it and you get that smell and you're like, ah, yes, that's Christmas. I almost am getting that kind of smell, which I'm wondering, well, cinnamon's definitely part of it, and I'm wondering what else might be contributing to that. But it still smells really great. Cinnamon does come through quite a bit on that, but it doesn't overpower. Really, you get a nice fruity taste up front. It's a tiny, tiny bit sour from that cranberry, just a tiny bit. So with this tea, if I were drinking it just regularly and not for a tasting video, I would probably add a little bit of sugar, just a tiny bit, just to help counteract a little bit of that sourness. But it's really not bad. It's quite pleasant to drink. Again, that cinnamon comes through and helps bring it all together, so you end up almost feeling like you're drinking a Christmas punch. And you know, it kind of warms everything with that. And going through and doing that second taste, yeah, I definitely get that apple. So the apple comes through. But again, nothing seems to seriously overpower another except for potentially that sour note. Again, it's not unpleasant. It just lets me know that I'm consuming something that's got a bit of an acidic nature to it, which cranberries do. Actually, this is quite a pleasant tea. I think, you know, it's definitely above the gingerbread blondie, definitely above the caramel shortbread. It's above the mint. Yeah, it's definitely, it's not in my bottom three. If I look over my notes here really quick, I actually even think that it ranks above the Let It Snow tea. So that was day one. Oh, that cinnamon rooibos chai. I think it's on par with that rooibos chai. It might be a tiny bit behind it, but only a tiny bit, just because I do think that rooibos chai was really, really well balanced. But again, not a bad little tea. Again, not super caffeinated, so if you're concerned about having caffeine too late in the day, then this one's really not one to worry about. Or if you're sensitive to caffeine, but you still like to get a little bit of that stimulant, not a bad choice. So I will actually recommend this tea without any reservations. And I will be back at this again tomorrow.